Okay, so Jack's talk is on Talk to the Animals using AI to allow visitors to converse with museum objects.
Hi everyone. So for those that don't know me, I'm Jack Ashby from the University Museum of Zoology in Cambridge. I'm talking to you about something that we were working on over the last couple of years in the Museum of Zoology from October 2024 to December 2025, so 15 months up until this Christmas. We had what we have been constantly saying, and no one has corrected us yet, is the first opportunity in the world where a museum has allowed their visitors to have a conversation with a museum object using AI from the object's point of view. So just to describe what I mean by that is we chose 15 specimens from across our museum, ranging from a red admiral butterfly here to our dodo, to our fin whale, our giant sloth, the only real giant sloth skeleton on display in the UK. Here, our mallard, red pandas. We chose a real range of cockroaches, real range of taxa preparation types, so skeletons, taxidermy, pinned insects, wet specimens, and kind of different species with different kinds of reputations. If you know, like people are fond of mallard ducks and red pandas, and perhaps at the moment less fond of American cockroaches. And we gave them the opportunity to use their own devices to scan a QR code, which I'm afraid I've disabled here by squiggling over it, so you don't ruin our data if you start playing. You scan the QR code and it takes you to a web platform in which you can ask the objects anything you like. So, and the object will answer back. You can do that by typing, you can do that by speaking, and it will either, well, it will both answer in text and answer out loud if you want it to. It changes its language depending on how old you are. So it will try and speak to you at an age appropriate level. Your first step is to tell it who you are and how old you are, and it will answer in whatever language you speak to it in. And I'll skip too early there. It was a platform developed in collaboration with a tech company called Nature Perspectives, who I'll spend a bit of time talking about in a moment. But the short story is that they were a brand new company who were founded by graduates from our Masters in Conservation Leadership program from the Cambridge Conservation Initiative, which is the organization we share our building with in Cambridge. So it's a very local group of people who are interested in environmental conservation. What we were trying to do is to test whether these AI-based conversations help people care more about the natural world. Now, this is, I think, quite an unusual collaboration with a tech company, and the job of a naturalist museum, most of us would probably agree, is to try and get people to care about the natural world, among other things, but that's reasonably fundamental. This tech company, that was also their only aim, to try and get people to care about the natural world using AI. So we were the second step in their pilot, where the first step had been they stuck a load of these QR codes around the city of Cambridge on things like a tree or a bench next to the river, and you could have a conversation with the tree, or for example, have a conversation with a Cambridge hedgehog or a Cambridge squirrel or the River Cam or Isaac Newton's apple tree. And they then said to us, we want to test this out in a museum using museum specimens as the natural entities, as they call it, as the individuals you're conversing with, rather than these things out in the city of Cambridge. And effectively, it's a fundamentally different approach to museum interpretation. It is when we write a label or produce any kind of interpretation, obviously the people in the museum are deciding exactly what information to give you, maybe through evaluation, maybe not. This completely democratizes the process where the visitors are choosing what they want to know, and it is more or less removing all of the gatekeeping, depending on how you train the model in the first place. What I'm doing here is kind of sharing with you very top level kind of findings from this so far, and maybe some reflections on what I think about it at the end. But as I say, it's it's an experiment. So we're a university museum. We're super interested in taking new opportunities as they come up, new ideas, new developing tech in this place, and testing them out on behalf of the museum sector, and see how it goes. So this was, as I say, it is an experiment. We're also collaborating with Chris Sandbrook, who's a professor in conservation biology, in seeing, does this work and is this a good idea, essentially. And the beautiful thing about this being a digital AI tech project is that we are gathering enormous amounts of data about the people, just their ages and their preferred language, and what they are saying. Every question they ask, we're collecting, which we're doing ethically and with research statements. Every answer that's given, we're collecting. So we can use these now many thousands, tens of thousands of pieces of data to understand what are people interested in a museum, or in a naturalist museum like ours. But also, over the course of a conversation, are they changing their opinion? Can we detect changes can we detect learning? Can we detect changes in emotional response? So we're calling it hearts and minds research. As I say, we're also just curious about to see what people are interested in asking about. We have got thousands and thousands of messages, which I'll come into. Now, I'm not someone who uses AI at all in my life, on purpose at least. So I've come into this as a complete novice, but I am interested in testing things out, as I said. So my experience of talking to the dodo, for example, for the first time, started off really unimaginatively. So I asked it questions that I might expect to find on a museum label, like what do you eat, or where did you live, or how did you die even. But very, very quickly I realized that there was more going on than that. So kind of my visitor journey started from this kind of dry learning-based questions, fact-based questions, and you could realize from the kind of personality that's been given back to you, that the information that's been given back to you, which I will absolutely admit is kind of in this over-the-top flowery AI language, that is slightly, makes your skin crawl just ever so slightly. It has got better. This is, I say, the first conversation in October 24. But you could see that there is more going on than that. And so you start asking it more kind of individual-based questions like you would ask a real person. So I started asking kind of more discursive questions, like kind of the ethical sides of dodo conversation. Should we clone you? Or could we clone you? Is the first question. And it answered in a relatively sensible place. And then I said, do you think we should try? You don't really need to read that, but it coincidentally, and it is a coincidence, has the same opinions that I do, in terms of absolutely not, we should not try, but it has delivered them in a very kind of balanced and sensible way, that really might help people engage in this conversation. So it is a proper discursive thought of basically saying we shouldn't, we could spend those efforts better, and it's kind of scientifically complicated. If you are reading that, you might spot that it uses puns. So it's saying on the one wing instead of on the one hand, which kind of blows my, as I say, it's coming as a complete AI novice that it was doing that sort of thing. It was super interesting. Anyway, we launched it, and it was intended as a 4-week pilot, just as a 4-week test, but it went absolutely crazy. We had over 300 international news pieces about it, including me being live on Kay Burley on Sky News, which was the most terrifying interview I've ever done. The very first morning, it being a kind of university pilot project, it took us months and months and months to get through intellectual property agreement with the university. Nature Perspectives owns the intellectual property of this, and the university was trying to claim it, which it was unfair. Anyway, it all came in very late, and like 5:30 in the morning, they sent over the very first kind of real model for all 15, and I was sat on the train to Cambridge just testing them, knowing that ITV News were turning up at 8:30 in the morning. So I was doing it on the train, and I was all doing it text-based, and the very first kind of interview, I was like, oh, and you can hit play and it plays live. And again, I was with the dodo, and it had an accent, and I was like, oh, there's an accent, which I found, I don't know what I think about the kind of ethics of an AI generated, it was kind of a generic South Indian accent. for that. Anyway, that is a thought, but it was, yeah, there's some learning there. Anyway, the kind of it was interesting because the Telegraph were trying to break it, as you can imagine. It was at the time of, for example, it was the time of the Conservative leadership elections, and it was asking Al Finwale, who would you vote for in this? And the AI said, obviously we don't really pay much attention to human politics, but as long as it's someone who cares about the natural world, that's all we really want. So every conversation, it pivots back to this deepening engagement with nature, which really did blow my mind. So some stats over the course of those 15 months, about 3,400 devices signed up to it. We know that about 1.5 people per device are being used. So that corresponds to about 6,500 visitors. So that's actually really low in my opinion. So that's 3.7% of our visitors use this, which I think is a consideration. We didn't market it. We did market it heavily through the press. We didn't market it heavily. The press marketed it heavily, and many people came to see it. Like our visitor numbers skyrocketed in the first couple of months. That's why we extended it. But after that initial boost, not many of our visitors are actually using it. Like we all, I imagine, have had thoughts about whether people come to a museum to use the digital devices or not. But that is a thought, and I've had, I would say, over 100 conversations with other museums who are interested in doing that, and that is a piece of information. But those that do using it are using it that they're interested in. Those that are using it do really get involved in it. So we've had over 40,000 messages exchanged through it over the course of about 5,500 conversations. So the average conversation length is 9 messages, although one, I think, woman in her 50s talked to one of the specimens for 201 messages, which is amazing. But yeah, like I said, that engagement level is low, so there's an investment curve there. But we could have pushed it more in the gallery. Just to show you briefly what people were asking about, and obviously this data is biased by how you categorize it, but these are how AI has categorized questions. The top level there, if you can't read it, it says entities, the objects, feelings and perspectives. So it is people engaging with individual human-based discursive questions that are treating the specimens like an individual. One of my research questions that I was interested in, do people see these specimens as an individual or as kind of a generic representative of their entire species? And I think as you have those conversations, people seem to have the same reaction that I did, that there is a human there. It feels like there's a human there, and everything else, there's obviously, again, these are all fact-based things, but there are a lot of kinds of conversations going on, and that was super interesting. So just in my last couple of minutes, my kind of reflections on this is a few of these questions. So I would ask, if you were putting this in your museum, is it appropriate? I mean that, like, I've had conversations with a couple of different kinds of museums that I have some reflections on, and so one museum was a pathology museum. So should you be putting an artificial intellect behind human remains? That's a question I would ask. I'd seen some tests where there are historical figures being used, including some minoritized historical figures. So where does the model come from that? I think that's ethically questionable. Something that we got wrong was how we engaged particularly our volunteers, who feared that they were essentially being replaced. Like, we have volunteers in our gallery every moment we're open whose job it is to engage visitors, and we perhaps didn't land it with them, didn't brief them properly on what we were trying to do. Like, well, they were saying we can tell you what visitors are interested in, but we are definitely, and they were on board by the end. But people are definitely asking the AI different questions, and they're asking visitors. And I think anyone would sensibly ask about the environmental impacts. We've been pushing nature perspectives all the way through this. As I say, they're all conservation people, so they're involved in it too. But at the end of the project, so how many messages was it? It was so over 40,000 messages. They worked out that the carbon spent over the course of 15 months was 50 kilograms of carbon, which I feel comfortable with. That's about 9 grams a message, which is, if you drive a car for 40 meters, that's how much. Or the average email with newsletter emails about that. And the entire project was 650 litres of water, which over the course of 15 months doesn't feel like that's problematic to me. And yeah, like I said, however it's using it, there's not a huge amount of uptake there. Is it accurate? It's a massive question. We were using AI to test the accuracy of the statement. So it would pull out every factual statement in an answer and then use an independent language model to detect whether it's true. And over 99.6% of those statements were factual. Inferred information, which it didn't pull out as a fact, I think was probably lower than that. But it's good. I think that's probably better than when I speak to people about natural history. So I shall end there.
Brilliant, Jack.
Thanks very much. Does anyone have any questions for Jack?
Thanks. It's a really cool project, really interesting, and thanks for taking on for the team by finding out how it's working and actually feeding it back. It's really, really valuable to get the information coming back into the sector. So nice one. For me, the one thing which kind of jumps out immediately is this anthropomorphization of the animals effectively by having that conversation, and it's a very human interaction, which obviously that in itself is problematic for some people. So what are your thoughts on that? I'd be interested to know.
Yeah, I think it's obviously you're having a conversation in words or in text, so if you are naturally anthropomorphizing it and it's speaking to you. The cockroaches sound exactly like John McEnroe. They did that, and I think I trust the visitors to understand that they're not having a conversation with a cockroach, right? And that they get what's going on there. Each of the nature perspectives have been quite understandably protective about how they've trained it, but they are training it with kind of academic information, and they're giving it a personality. And we're providing the facts about our individual specimens. What is the problems? But they are training with a personality. And I think it's a sensible question to ask, and it's a sensible question to ask in different museum disciplines as well. But I was personally comfortable with the visitors understanding what's going on here, that it isn't real. But yeah.
Well.
Yeah, hi. I'm interested to know what was it actually trained on? Where was the source information coming for this for the answers?
Yeah, great question. Like I said, that's proprietary to data perspectives, but I told them these are kind of sources of information that I'm not comfortable with you using, and they have trained it on a kind of an existing language model that has been honed. But if you can ask it really, really scientific questions, it is clearly just pulling data from published academic text. It is pulling information from public academic texts as well as other sources. So I don't know exactly, but it's been pretty good. As I say, we also then added specimen-specific information on top of it.
So one question, which was, are you worried about accessibility or interpretation policy if people are reading it?
So as I said, you can press play and you can do it voice only.
If they don't know that, or if they don't want to do it in a exhibition sort of context or anything like that. Are you worried? Did you put your interpretation policy on it at all?
No.
Okay.
We didn't. It's one of those things that starts off as a pilot and then runs and runs. Like, how does this work? But we certainly kept saying, and I think this is true of a lot of AI generated information, the reading level is still coming out too high here. So although it's talking to me, if in those screenshots, you could tell if you're a 7-year-old and it's supposed to come out as a 7-year-old, but I don't think it always made it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Jack. That was absolutely fascinating.